Well, I was surprised when Jimmy hit me up to do this, but hello, Mark. I'm going to give it a try. I'm not really old enough to do this, but I don't know why Jimmy picked me. He must think I've been the older. I like history. I like to read about history. I don't know as much about this history as I'd like to, but I'm going to try to enlighten us a little bit tonight on what we do know. I never did take history after I got out of high school. I did have to take government, and I hated government. And college, especially one summer, I was going an hour and a half classes in the summer to had a government teacher, and they called him By the Way Jackson. Well, the first time I went, I noted why they called him that. The second time, I recorded 97 times, By the Way Jackson. That's just, doesn't have anything to do with their lesson, but it's quite very well like that. The history of the Eastside Church of Christ can be traced back to 1897. I'm a little surprised at that when I read it. I've been reading a history of Mills County, where I grew up, and by 1875 there were churches all over that county, and schools. A lot of them were the same, and have little school buildings all over the county. But anyway, that's our list we have. Says there wasn't a church building then. Sam Rebel conducted a series of gospel meetings during the year. Now, I never could find out where those were conducted. They didn't have a meeting, maybe homes, something else, but during the year, Sam Ribble, I guess, stayed over a while. The first church building was erected in 1907. Now, I was surprised at that too, but it was that late. 1907 was the first one. And I don't know, I'd like to know more about what the condition of Snyder was then, whether there were other churches, buildings, and so forth. But then that was 10 years after the first recorded gospel being preached here. The first was conducted just east of Deep Creek. I couldn't find out anything else about where it was. And then next to several years, several gospel meetings were conducted by several pioneer preachers, and named a lot of them. Some of them I'd heard of, but this one especially I've heard of. J.D. Tant. You ever heard of J.D. Tant? Well, you know about him. He was quite a character. He would debate anybody, anywhere for the Church of Christ. Went in a buggy all over Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and New Mexico. One story I particularly remember, my brother-in-law, Janet's brother, lent me that book about his life. I read a whole book about it. And it's amusing. He would conduct for his meetings, for his debates, for the pay before he started. And he had confirmed that before he was doing the debating. But now, he would debate anybody as long as they'd pay off. In Arkansas, he was debating. I will too. Trying to make a deal with this church up there, this church congregation for debate, and he'd take his pay in anything, and they were going for pigs. And if I remember the story right, he wanted 5, and they offered him 3. And they hassled for a while. And just to show you what kind it was, he just said he told them they could take their hogs and go to hell, and his leaving. And he did.
Well, that's good news.
In 1911, a second building was erected at what is now 1914 27th Street. And I didn't bother to look that up. I don't know what's there now. In 1915, the congregation began meeting in a building on Scarborough Street. Do we still have a Scarborough Street? I don't think so. I don't know where it was, so I don't know much.
There used to be a doctor here way back when, and I'm sure it was a street.
This
yeah,
says
house.
the location is now 1803 College Avenue, so I guess it's something else. Then in 1924, the congregation erected the building on 25th Street, where Janet and I first started to attend church services here. It would be used for many years. Janet and I moved here in 1958. They were still meeting at 25th Street. And we've been going here ever since. It was a large congregation then. Now they were, but I have a directory, the first one I could find that was ever put out by Eastside. And there, what did we say, Johnny, 530?
533 is the members of the
Pictures, including children and all. Then a lot of names in the back, I didn't count them, of people who didn't have their picture. So it was a large congregation. I bet there were at least 50 or 60 didn't have their pictures made. So it was a large congregation. There were 8 elders, 15 deacons. I'll read them to you just right quick. Some of them you'll remember. A lot of them I remember. The elders were Buford Browning, Hugh Murray, Gray Parks, J.E. Payne, E.J. Richardson, H.P. Rogers, Lewis Smith, and J.T. Stevens. A lot of you remember J.T. I remember every one of those men, not too well, and of course Buford. And the deacons were Garth Austin, Phil Burns, Wade Davies, Seaver Nike, Virgil Fleming, Surrey Gillum, Malcolm James, J.C. Massingale. Kim is the one that comes to talk to us about the work in wherever it is. Bobby McCormick, Dusty Moore, Bonita's son. A lot of you remember Bonita. Paul Moore, Edwin Parks, Robert Scott, and Charles Stevens. So there was quite a congregation at that time when Janet and I started attending there. The preachers that have been here since 25th Street was established were well, I can remember most of them, but I thought I had them written down. Janet messed my notes up. Anyway, the latest preachers, it's something most of you remember well, were some of you remember Glenn Pace. He was preaching here when we started going worship here in 1958 down on 25th Street. Glenn Pace was a good man. I had grown up in the Baptist church, and I promised Janet that I'd go to church with her before we married. And we started going to 25th Street. By the way, I believe it was 1953, if I remember reading right. The church was getting so large at 25th Street during the oil boom that they split. Amicable split. They moved to 37th Street and established another congregation. And Janet had attended there a time or two. She was here a year before I was, but she was going to 25th Street, so that's where we went. Glenn wanted to study with me, and I studied with him. He was very kind and very gentle, not like some of the results I got when I found out I was a Baptist, but anyway. I studied with Glenn, and if it hadn't been for him, if I talked to somebody different, it might have been different. But I was convinced that I'd been put under the water, but I hadn't been baptized. I was baptized there. One of the next preachers was Richard Williams. Anybody remember Richard? Somebody does. One of them. Glenn was a pretty stern preacher. If he saw teenagers doing a little talking or something, and he'd call them down while he was up there preaching. And it did keep some quiet in the auditorium, but he was a good man. I thought we'd lost him one time. I remember down 25th Street. He was preaching on a Sunday night, and all of a sudden he started kind of stumbling and turned white as a sheet and sat down, and we thought he was having a heart attack. Fortunately or unfortunately, it was kidney stones, and I never had heard of them then, but I heard of them later, and I can know the pain he was in when we were written, but he got fine, so he had a fine family. We enjoyed Fletcher. And then Don Browning. Many of us know of Don Browning. Grew up out in Fluvanna, little chubby redhead, young for a preacher. I don't know how old Don was, but he was an ex-preacher, and he was a good one. Read some of his writings while I was getting ready for this, to talk about this. He was, I don't know how old Don was. He wasn't long out of college, but he was young, and he loved the Lord and had some good sermons. He studied. He was responsible, I guess, for getting that work started in India. It was about the time he was here that we started that good work we've had ever since in India, along with help from some of the elders then. The McCormicks were heavily involved in it. It was a good work. Much has been done over the years for the widows and for the poor people in India. Some of you may remember old Samuel and Josie, old Indian couple that were over so many years, visited the United States a couple of times, and they were a pleasure to me. You talk about dedicated, now they were dedicated in God's service. But Don was good for us. He used to come out. I was teaching elementary PE then. He used to come out early in the morning for a class and play badminton. He was trying to lose some weight. I think I was the only one that lost weight, but we did have some fun. After Don, Bill Minnick came with his wife, Mary, and their children, and Bill stayed with us all. He was a fine man, a fine preacher. They moved on, and then when Janet was taking cancer treatment in Arlington, they were there, and we contacted them, and they were attending church out at Richland Hills, and we were up there weeks at a time. We'd go out there on Wednesday night. It was a fine congregation. I never remember. We'll forget one doctor, I think he was a chiropractor, taught a class on Wednesday night on God's grace, and a great class. But we enjoyed going out there. Sam Kitchen, old Sam, Easterner. I guess he grew up in Georgia, Florida, or somewhere back there, but he was a good preacher. We've had a lot of good preachers over the years. I think the most, I started to say it's still out, but I think it's in pretty well on this most recent one.
Preach it, brother.
Well, we appreciate you. Then old Sam was here a while, and he left and went back. Well, I think he went down to South Texas. Then Doug Ali, and then a fellow named Tom, who we remember so well. Tom was with us for many years. Wonderful years we had with Tom. Still here at this congregation for a while anyway. But we appreciated Tom and June for so many years and their family. We've had some good ones. We sure have. And Tom was certainly one of them. Then bid back Jeff Dunn. I tell you, I didn't have to have my hearing aids when Jeff was preaching, but Jeff was good for us. He pulled in a lot of people that
You too.
were not going to church, needed help, and were trying to find the Lord, and He was
Skip
good.
one, James.
You skipped one. You
Steve.
skipped one.
You skipped Steve.
Steve Barrett.
Yeah.
Had him down here. Well, don't have my glasses. Yeah, Steve was here not very long. Steve was, and Valerie, we love both of them. Steve had a heart attack while he was here. I took a book over to him to read that someone gave me when I had open heart surgery, and and Valerie wouldn't give it to him. He said, somebody took my heart out and stomped that sucker flat. And she wouldn't let him read it, but he got told anyway. I guess he's all right. Yeah, Steve was a good one. We still hear from Steve and Valerie, come back occasionally. Thank you, Jimmy, man. I'm glad you're in here to keep me.
Well,
straight.
there's 2 or 3 other people that tried to tell you.
You're the only one I listen to.
Louder than the rest.
We enjoy Jeff, and we sure are enjoying Matthew and his family, and we're so glad they're here with us. I think probably his judgment's still out on us, but maybe we'll come around to him too. But, that's a rundown on the preachers we've had, and a little bit about what's going on in this congregation. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the last 58 or so years since we've been members of this congregation. There have been a lot of good things happen, in my opinion, in this congregation. I mentioned a while ago the India work, and it was started when Don Browning was here, and I'm sure Don had a lot to do with it. There's been so much, I can't even name what all been done over there. I wish some of them that were so involved in it are gone now, but I know they have some water systems they didn't have. They have help for the widows who are so hard off in India, and schools, even the junior college, and schools for the children. So much has been done. We had, years ago, we had to work in Australia, which we thought was a real good work, and Buford and I were kind of the ones they reported to, and I got real interested in it. Tom, I think, didn't we have dinner with y'all over?
Yes.
With Ted Paul and I?
Yes.
He came over from Australia. Sure, good man.
Good
Made a
man.
big impression
Yeah.
on me. And I don't know, well, Buford and Edmund went over there one time, and they thought things were going well. They were going to send Jim Bob and me, but they're just going to give us a one-way ticket, so we didn't go. Anyway, after I left as an elder, I kept asking, because I was real interested, and I was the one that got all the correspondence, and they couldn't hear from them. Didn't hear anything from Australia. We were supporting them. So finally, I think they cut the support off. And so I decided, well, I think I told Jimmy or somebody, and see if I could find out anything. Their sponsoring congregation was Eastside Church of Christ in Oklahoma, of all places. And so I called up there and talked to the preacher. Well, his son was in charge of the missions and in charge of the Australian work. That's where we sent our money. And I never could talk to his son, ask him to call me. And finally, I just gave up. I don't know. He said they weren't supported anymore either, so I don't know what happened. I'd like to hear about Australia. They had a good thing going over there. We've had work in several places. Battle Mountain, Nevada, Jerry,
Dyer,
who?
Dyer, was it Jerry Dyer?
Jerry Dyer. I couldn't think.
I think Jerry Dyer was with Australia, wasn't he?
Okay, that may be right,
Yeah,
Tom.
Jerry Dyer was with Australia.
That was Charles
Okay.
Stevens'
Yeah.
son-in-law, wasn't it? Did he do something?
I can't remember who's in Battle Mountain. I don't think anybody, I know he came here.
Yeah, it'll come to me, I'm sure.
Anyway,
I just
I'm
give
sorry,
it a
I'm not,
while.
but there's nobody I can ask. Bobby McCormick, my old reliable, and Edwin is not everywhere I can get a hold of him. And anyway, we had some.
Didn't Chuck Stevens have something to do with Battle Mountain? Or am I-
Chuck Stevens?
Yeah,
I don't know.
not that I remember.
Not that I
He
remember.
had something to do with a church up there, either there in Colorado. didn't
Well, now Chuck was preaching out in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Oh,
he? Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
what about his Chuck's brother-in-law,
Maybe that's it.
he was a youth minister here for a short time.
Niles?
Niles Donnell?
Yeah,
I
That's
don't
what I
know
was thinking.
Whatever happened to Niles. He was real sick at one time.
yeah.
Over the years, we've been involved in a lot of good works, in my opinion. We established a mission fund, which has been good, and helps support our mission. We have a Needy Children's Foundation, which is very good. It helps support the orphans home, and it's supposed to help our needy children in this county, in this town, in this surroundings. And that's something I hope we still check into and do, because of the, being in the school system as long as I was, I still remember that there are a lot of needy children in our town. I'll tell a quick story about one that we did help with this Needy Children's Foundation money. Todd Stewart's wife, Juliet,
Mhm.
worked with those kind of children, and she hit me up one day to see if we could get some help from this little girl. She was 3 years old and never walked. Well, we did get together some money for the Needy Children Foundation, and I turned that over to Julianne and told her, let me know how it was going. And she called me one day, said, we've got the brace, and she's going to wear it in the morning. We've already tried it on her. Did some, said, you want to come out there? I said, yes, I sure do. So she told me where to come out, outside the north part of town. And several of us, her family, were waiting out in the yard, and they brought this little 3-year-old girl out and carried her, set her down the steps on the sidewalk, and she walked down the sidewalk. First step she'd ever taken. Pretty sweet. We have helped Africa with Tony Malden and his work. That is a good work. Jen and Rick, most of you know who Jen and Rick are. Our daughter, son-in-law, have been over there a couple of times. Tony finally forced them into it, but we can't imagine what those children live in. They feed about several thousand once a week peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. When Rick was making them, they shoved him out of the way. He wasn't making them fast enough. They just shoved it on. Jenna said she got to watching some of them would tear them in two, put half in the pocket, take home to a little brother and sister. But it's something we need to support as long as we can. There are so many good works, it's just hard to support all of them. But we've had some that we've supported over the years, and it's really been good. We've had some work in South America and Ghana. As a matter of fact, Jen and Rick and the boys went over there one time when they lived in Tampa, when the boys were small. And I think I had Jed just about to back out. I told him he'd probably get eaten by an anaconda. He wouldn't know what an anaconda was. I said, it's a big old 20-foot long snake. And now, I shouldn't have, that would have been a good grandpa. He's still scared to death of snakes. But I really think that trip had an impression on him. He was young, junior high, and he helped with the optometrist that went over there. And now he is an optometrist. So that may have been where he got his calling. But it was good for those children. There were several children when he was living there. So that was real good. not long after WTC, Western Texas College was built, we built, I think, didn't we build that building out there? I think so. Can't ask anybody anymore. Anyway, established a ministry out there with Dean Morgan was their first person to work out there with the college students, and it was real well, went real well. We got to know a lot of those kids, and some of them came to church. We fed them up here some. We even got to know some of the volleyball girls. We had them over at the house a time or two, and got to know them, feed them a meal, and that went along fine for a while, but it kind of got to where it wasn't going so fine, so we sold it to 37th Street, and I believe they finally sold it to someone. It's a museum.
It's the visitor center.
It's what?
The visitor center.
Visitor Center now, but anyway, for a while that was good. I hate to see it end, but sometimes. We had Joy School for a while, and it went real well. It was started that.
Peggy Englehart.
Peggy Englehart.
And then Linda Mize had something.
Yeah, and it started it. I believe it was first on Thursday. We called it Thursday School, and then it I think went 4 days a week or 5 for kids that weren't school age.
I was a product of that.
What?
I was a product of
Well,
that.
good for you. Well, some of our grandchildren were too. I know Taylor went, and J.W. went, and they were probably the only ones too young to go to it. I remember one time the teacher wanted me to come over and read him a story. You remember how fair Taylor was and blonde, and the little Redmond boy, can't remember his name, the youngest one was a year younger than Taylor, I think. But they were buddies, and I was reading the story until Taylor just kept inching over and crawled up in my lap. Little Redmond came over. I ended up trying to hold both of them and read the book. But anyway, I enjoyed seeing those kids, and it went well for a while. It kind of got where it wasn't going so good. We didn't have anybody over here teaching it, and not many of the children coming were from Eastside, although some were. So anyway, we've had some good work. So, we used to have, well, we didn't sponsor it, but maybe our campus minister did, college camp for their students, for our children here at Eastside, not just Eastside, here in 37th Street too, I believe. Went to that summer camp, didn't they? Jeff went, didn't he, Jenny? Yeah. That was good. And also, something that was really a pleasure at Eastside is, I don't know what they called it, a youth meeting or something. Rick Martin.
Youth outreach.
Youth outreach. Would meet in the summer, and a lot of kids would come to that, and some outstanding speakers now got their first start. Brian Starr, some of you heard Brian Starr. I can remember him standing on a stool and barely see over it, talking to the congregation. Now he's, what, dean of?
I thought he was president at Lubbock Christian.
Anyway,
He's provost
very good speaker.
at LCU.
Very good speaker. So, yeah, that went well, and a lot of our children would go to Camp Blue Haven there. Some of our children went. I don't think Jay ever went. Jay was more of a stay home, but Jenna and Jeff, I think, both went, and quite a few from here went to Camp Blue Haven up in New Mexico. So we've done some good things here in Eastside, and when I was talking about this Needy Children Foundation and some of these ministerial alliances, I hope we can encourage people. You know, a lot of people don't give flowers anymore, or funerals or even request no flowers. Well, it's a good place to give a memorial to someone needy children, maybe that's something you deacons could encourage, get before the congregation. Well, through the years, we've had lots of good times, we've had some funny times. And as I think back, as I was doing this, I remember so many of our former members that have gone on now. There are very few here that left that were here when we started. Jimmy, Dan, and Wanda are the only ones that and Edwin, probably. But anyway, so many we remember. Most of you have heard, or some of you have heard me tell this story. Miss Claude McCormick, Bobby's dad and mother, went here, and he passed away. And Joe Glass, who led singing, passed away. And I never heard her start singing "Sing to Me of Heaven" until I thought of Joe. He always sang that song, and he always started out, "Sing to me of heaven." And we loved Joe. He sang joyfully and loudly and well. Anyway, while I started to tell, Sister McCormick and Sister Glass were both widows. Sat together down near the front. Both were nearly blind and couldn't hear or see very well at all. And for some reason, one morning they decided to pass the bread before they passed. No, they decided to pass the collection plate out of order. I don't know why. Everybody knows it's supposed to be last, but they passed it first that morning. And real quiet down there, and all of a sudden, Miss Glass said, "Violet," and McCormick's name was Violet, "don't eat that, that's $1 bill." Well, we've had some funny things. Anybody got any stories they'd like to tell about what happened at Eastside?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Who does? Jim Bob, you're not going to tell about what Charlie Bowes laughed at me for saying in the elders meeting, I know.
No, I wouldn't do that.
I didn't think you would.
Well, I'll speak up. Fred and I moved to Snyder in 1953.
53?
1953 of June of 1953. We went to the elders at 25th Street and was told we would rather for y'all to wait, because in 2 weeks we're going to open 37th Street.
Yeah, I knew it was in 53.
And so we said, okay, we'll just wait. Well, there was a lady across the street from where I was sitting out there with my trailer house, and Mrs. Jones. Now, what her first name, I can't tell you. She had come visit us, and we talked and talked. She said, well, you got to come down to 25th Street. I said, we'll be there. And we did. But we were held off because of 37.
So it was a while before y'all migrated.
Well, we only stayed actually 2 years in Snyder before the company moved me again to Odessa. But we enjoyed, you talk about Browning. First time I ever heard him speak, Don was 15 years old, and they brought him down one Wednesday night to speak to the people there at 37th Street.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, man, that's a good boy. So, I never knew it.
Well, Don was pretty young. I don't know how old he was. I saw his picture when I was looking up the elders, and this was probably his first full-time preaching job, I'm sure. It's amazing to me how few preachers we've had in the length of time compared to how many were here in the early church. I didn't read these, I don't think, or maybe I did. Don't remember.
Well, James, let me say, when we talk a lot about our history, sometimes we talk about how we did not stress grace as we should. And our son Jay says when Tom Holcomb was here was when he got his good background about grace. So we have to contribute Tom with all of his outstanding
Well, there's lots we
lessons.
can contribute.
Yes, true.
Well, you know, we've had, I don't know, 7 or 8 since 58. And listen to the ones we've had from the first church building till the one that came to 37th Street, Eastside, 25th Street, Glen Pace. Joe Nall, Price Billingsley, Liv Sanders, C.E. Christian, R.C. Bell, W.M. Speck, O.D. Dahl, R.J. Clark, J. Porter Sanders, Lemoyne Lewis, Klein Payton, Shirley Morgan, Raymond Kelsey, Clifton Rogers, Austin Varner, Boyd Fannin, and Ted Norton. All those within, how long? Not too long a span.
And Lemoyne Lewis later became a professor at ACU. Excellent Bible.
And we've heard some of these. Shirley Morgan, I've heard of him, Raymond Kelsey, but most of them I'd never heard of. But,
Dial preached at our while.
yeah.
Way
Well,
back when.
in, I guess it was in 19, when did we have our centennial? 100th year.
It's right there. Those pages that I put up here, that I brought in, we found, June and I found these going through, if y'all want to look at them. But June 28th and 29th, 1997, that's when we had our 100th anniversary. And there's some papers up here that have been laminated of our advertising and some photos that were taken of people who were here at that time. So that's when it was. It was in 97 when we had our 100th.
We made a big deal out of that. We had it out at the
Oh yeah, we had it out at the Coliseum. We had a huge
We
crowd.
had a huge crowd.
Yeah, it was great.
It was a day long. Just about every preacher came back.
And as many of them who were alive. Most of the live ones did.
Now, Tom,
How about the dead? No, one of them.
I don't know if any of them are deceased, are they? Been 100 years? Oh, yeah, they sure.
And Billy, you mentioned his name, he preached.
The ones we knew came.
Yeah, right.
Minnick is
Bill
gone.
Minnick.
Bill Minnick, is that right? Yeah.
And his wife, both of
Him
them.
and his wife both are gone.
Yeah.
He used to preach at Richard and Hills. But at one time, Richard and Hills had 4 preachers.
I don't think he preached out there. Now, I may be wrong. He was in the insurance business up there.
Well, yes, he was.
But we went out there with him, and I don't think
He preached at Woodland West in Arlington.
Oh,
He left, when he moved over there.
Okay.
He was the pulpit preacher for the Woodland West Church in Arlington until he retired from that, and they moved over to Richland Hills and went to church there. He served as an elder there.
Well, I appreciate this crowd. I'm sorry I didn't do a better job, but maybe that gives you a little background. Jim Bob, quit shaking your head yes.
Turn your phone back on. Paula's working in the library, and she's found a bunch of cassette tapes from Richard Rogers and different ones. And anyway, those will end up getting thrown away someday. If any of you folks that remember those people want them, y'all need to get with Paula and let her give you some of those tapes you can listen to.
Who's
cassette
Richard
tapes.
Rogers?
If you can find a machine to show him, he used to be at
You
Sunset.
talking about Abe Rogers?
No,
No, I said Richard
Rogers. He used to be at Sunset in Lubbock.
Up at Sunset.
John Smith,
Oh,
there's some in there,
never-
John
never
Smith.
did.
Right.
Anyway, there's a bunch of CDs, I mean, not CDs, but cassettes, if anybody wants them.
Uh-huh.
They'll end up just being
Good Sunday speakers and that sort of thing.
John Smith's in there, so I would guess yes. I haven't looked at it.
Well, Eastside has
Still
been
got a cassette deck.
wonderful for me and my family over the years. Been a great comfort to us, and I know it has to a lot of people.
James, is there anything that stands out about any of the elders or the deacons?
Yeah, but I'm not gonna tell it. Yeah. I'll tell you, J.T. Stevens is one that, you know, about the time I came in the church, it started,
You used to be.
I'll say, changing a lot from the way it had been. It wasn't quite as, I'll say, dogmatic, however you want to put it. The changes were taking place, and Brother Steve would listen. And well, I think I can go with that. He was the oldest one in there, but he would go with the flow if he thought it was the right thing to do. It was all right. And yeah, he stands out to me.
Well, let me kind of respond to Jimmy's request there from my perspective as an incoming minister. When I was contacted about the work here, and that came through Bobby McCormick, and we had contact with Bobby and Billy when we were in Clyde, and when I was preaching in Clyde, and I won't go into all of that. But we moved to Tyler, and were there for 3.5 years, and Bobby called, and Doug Alley had left, and we were looking for someone, and it was the right time for us to consider a move. And we had looked at 2 other churches and had interviewed with 2 other churches before coming here. And when I came out to first meet and to meet with the elders here, there was a spirit in that elders meeting that I had not encountered anywhere I had ever been among the men who were elders here at that time. There was, of course, there was you and Edwin and Bobby and JT, Robert and Maurice, and there was a spirit there that I had not encountered anywhere else. And I appreciate the remarks that people make about me perhaps bringing a grace-oriented perspective, but that was already here when I came, because I sensed it immediately among the elders who were here. There was something different about this church, something different about the leaders of this church from anything that I had ever experienced before. And I knew that this is where I wanted to be, and I wanted my kids to be here. Because there was a spirit of love and grace, there was a spirit of nurture and compassion and care among the elders that, as I said before, I'd never experienced. And somebody laid the groundwork for that before I came. And after I met Don and Bill Minnick, both of them, and got to be friends with them, then I knew where it came from. And I think that when you talk about the history of this church, that has to be remembered. And I know that when I was talking to a friend of mine in Tyler about the difficulty of choosing between the other churches and this, both of the other churches were in larger cities, and they were much bigger churches. And of course, that when you're a younger preacher, preaching for a big church is always kind of a dream. And I remember what he said to me. He said, you may think that moving out to a West Texas town is a place where you could go and be forgotten. But he said, it just might be that it would be easier to be forgotten in a big church than it is in a place like Snyder and with the people that you have out there. And your reputation as a church had already preceded you in our contact, because he knew about that. And coming here was the right thing for us, absolutely, because of the leadership that was here and had been here for a long time. And I really can't say enough about the quality of leadership in the elders and in the deacons that has been here. And I think that that has been one of the high marks of this church, probably throughout its history. And I certainly experienced that myself whenever I came here, and I think it continues to be that way.
Well, this has certainly been a loving church too. When I had open heart surgery, Jen's sister came out here, and people would just bring food over and all the time and everything. And she said she's a member of the church down the way, and she hadn't experienced anything like that from her congregation. But this congregation has always been, I think, taking care of their members and loved each other.
We came here in September, and ever since we've been here, everyone here has really made us feel welcomed and loved and appreciated and helpful and everything. We came from churches in Amarillo and Abilene, and we just didn't feel the love and stuff there like we do here. And well, when we went to city, it made me where I didn't want to go to church and study. And we finally started going to the Plainview Church out there under Jackie Qualls, and we got associated with Jackie at that point in time, and started getting me more interested in going back to.
Where is that, in Colorado City?
It was in Colorado City.
I didn't know Jackie was down there.
Yeah, well, it was called Downtown Church of Christ at the time, but then they moved out to the Plainview in an old Baptist church out there and got us going. But I've really didn't feel all that comfortable there either. But I feel more comfortable here in wanting to learn more and participate more since I've been here in September than I have been in any congregation I've ever attended.
Well, maybe we're doing something.
And like I say, I feel loved here, and I can feel the love. And the first man that shook my hand when I came through the door was this man right here. And ever since then, everybody come to me and was introduced themselves to us and opened their arms to us and everything, and we're just so happy to be here. I wish that I found this congregation when I first moved to Colorado City back in '94. Maybe my kids would be a little better than what they are now, but I can just feel the love here, and I appreciate and love each and every one of you.
Thank you.
And we celebrated our 35th anniversary this past Monday. And, well, 35 years he's gone sometimes, but other times he wouldn't. And I felt, you know, the whole 35 years, I've never felt this good about a church than when I came here.
We appreciate y'all.
I haven't been here long, but I'll second that. Definitely the best church I've ever been to.
I guess it's like, kind of like what Tom said, you feel the presence of Christ here and the love and the grace that it's thrown out there to us. And it's just not from one person, it's from everyone here. And you can feel it, and it just makes you feel like you're needed to be here. And I'm finally learning some of y'all's guys' names.
We get a new one, we'll get the head of it.